Good morning, all.
Morning, Gary.
Morning.
Oh,
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. The recording has started. So welcome to the digital meeting of the Gwent Police and Crime Panel. It's being held on Microsoft Teams, and today is Friday, the 5th of March, 2021. Welcome, everybody, to the meeting. The meeting is currently taking place using Microsoft Teams platform and will be recorded and uploaded onto the Gwent Police and Crime Panel website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking at this meeting will be publicly available to all via the recording on the website at www.gwentpcp.org.uk. The press and public have been advised they can contact in advance to join via audio telephone conference. My name is Jill Howells. I am the independent member on the panel. And sorry, a little bit of interruption there. Sorry. Okay, so please can I advise all participants to mute their microphones when not contributing, and then unmute the microphone when invited to speak. If anyone wishes to participate in the meeting, please select the hands up button on the toolbar. So the agenda this morning, the first item on the agenda are declarations of interest. I need to declare an interest in agenda item 6, the Gwent Police and Crime Panel co-opted member, as a co-opted member myself. Do we have any other declarations of interest this morning? Peter?
I also am a co-opted member, so declare an interest.
Thank you. Any other?
Chair.
Thank you,
Would
Colin.
it be useful just to go down with introductions before we get going?
Yeah, I'm going to follow through now with the roll call next.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay. In terms of, we'll do the roll call now, followed by declarations of interest. So I will call out the names alphabetically by the local authorities on my list. So if members could acknowledge their attendance at the meeting. So Blaenau Gwent County Borough Council, Councillor Lisa Winnett, Councillor Clive Meredith, Caerphilly Council, Councillor Christine Forehead.
she's here.
I think Christie's here somewhere.
Yeah. Councillor Christine Forehead, can you acknowledge your attendance, please?
Yeah, can't hear you, Chair.
Right. Is anybody else having a problem with sound?
Yes, present. Present, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Mann,
Present, Chair.
Councillor Jez Kirby, Torbain, Councillor Emma Rapier, Councillor Mike Jeremiah, Monmouthshire, Councillor Peter Clark, Councillor Tony Eason,
Present, Chair.
Newport County Council, Councillor Bill Routley, Councillor Jason Jordan,
Yes, present, Chair.
Councillor Mark Spencer,
Present.
and co-opted members Peter Nuttall.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And by invitation, we have the Police and Crime Commissioner, Mr. Jeff Cuthbert.
Present.
We have the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, Ellery Thomas.
Good morning and present.
Good morning. Joanna Robinson. Rodri Guest.
Apologies
Present,
from Jana Robinson.
Thank you. Rodri Guest.
Present, Chair.
Darren Garwood Pask.
Good morning all, present, Chair.
Sean Curley.
Morning, present.
Joanne Regan.
Present, Chair.
Are there any other officers from the OPCC in attendance?
There are from Gwent Police, Chair. We've got Superintendent Vicky Townsend.
Yeah, I'll come on.
Sorry.
Sorry, John. Yeah. Any other officers from OPCC?
No.
Okay. And from Gwent Police, we have apologies from Chief Constable Pam Kelly, but we have Deputy Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman in attendance.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Present.
Good morning. And I understand we have Vicky Townsend, I believe, to do a presentation this morning.
Yeah, morning, present. You've also got Chief Super Simon Belcher.
Thank you very much. Is there any other officers in attendance? No, thank you. And we have officers from Caerphilly County Borough Council, Kath Forbes-Thompson
Present, Chair.
and Charlotte Evans.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence, I understand, from Councillor Lisa Winnett, Councillor Clive Meredith, Councillor Jez Kirby and Chief Constable Pam Kelly, along with Joanna Robinson. Do we have any other apologies that have been provided for the meeting? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on with the agenda then. There'll be a slight change to the agenda this morning. The officers doing the presentation for the automatic facial recognition, which is agenda item 5, will be moved up to agenda item number 4. So we will cover the minutes and then we will move on to the presentation, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving to the minutes of the last meeting then, agenda item number 3. We will be looking at the minutes for accuracy. So we'll run through page by page. If you have any issues, please put your hands up. So page 1. This is the minutes of the Friday, the 29th of January. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. No, Darren, it appears everybody thinks the minutes are an absolute accurate reflection of the discussion for the finance. That's good news, isn't it?
It is, Chair, it is indeed.
So can I ask for somebody to move the minutes, please?
Yeah, move the minutes.
Councillor Eason, apologies.
That's okay. Just one reference to the minutes. In there's a comment about the estates meeting which took place. There's been no report from that meeting, but just to record the meeting's taken place.
Thank you very much. Okay, to move the minutes.
Yeah, move the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. And to second the minutes. Thank you, Rita. And all to confirm they are an accurate reflection of the meeting. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 5 then, as we said, so the automatic facial recognition presentation. I'll hand over to the Commissioner for him to introduce the relevant officers to the presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Chair. As this is very much an operational presentation, I think it's probably best if with your agreement, I ask Deputy Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman to introduce her officers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you very much, Chair. So we have with us today Superintendent Vicky Townsend and Chief Superintendent Simon Belcher, who are going to take the panel through a presentation in relation to facial recognition and obviously pause at the end in terms of any questions that myself, Vicky or Simon Belcher will be able to answer, if that's okay. Without further ado, I'll see whether Vicky can put the presentation onto the screen. I'm not quite sure how this will work.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. I'll share the presentation now and then Mr. Belcher is going to introduce it for us. So if you can give me a second. Okay, if someone can confirm for me that they can see it, I'd be grateful.
It's just blank on my screen at the moment.
I can see
there we are. I've got something now.
Yes, I got it. I've got it.
Yeah, you can see it.
Lovely.
It does
Okay.
look quite small. I don't know whether it can be enlarged at all.
Vicky, it's in your view, so it's not in presentation view. It's in the view that you have with the slides down the side. So you have to put it into presentation.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. Bear with me and I'll go through it through a different angle.
See, technology sees all in a bit of board.
No. Whilst we're just waiting for Vicky, I think it's probably pertinent and relevant to say that we're looking at the locate side of this rather than the identify. I think Vicky will take us through both scenarios, but it's the locate that we're looking at. I think we're right, Vicky, in saying?
Yes, ma'am, that's spot on.
And we can go through the detail in relation to the differences either during the presentation if you want to, or afterwards, if that makes sense.
Thank you. It's been interesting to see the information that's gone out on Gwent Police on social media about the actual support there is for the use of this technology. And it's been nice to see, because quite often people will put the problematic side of it, but the amount of support there's been for this has been quite heartwarming, to be honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I say, whilst we wait for Vicky, I think, from the tests that have already been run in South Wales and Chief Superintendent Belcher would be able to give us more information around that. There's been, a large amount of charges in relation to individuals that, we would have probably struggled to identify otherwise. So, Vicky, it's still the same size. So I don't know whether we're able to rectify that or whether members have had the presentation anyway.
Chair, do you want me to see if I can share it? I do have a copy.
Sorry, Kath, we've had an updated version this morning. Can I just say, if you click on slideshow.
Yeah, is that changed for anybody now? Because the view on my screen has just changed from normal to presenter view.
No, it's not.
No,
No, it's not.
But I'm seeing something different than you. My apologies.
It might be worth us just going through it and explaining each of the slides in full detail, Vicky, if that's helpful.
I think maybe down in the bottom right-hand corner where you've got the little zoom little bar there, it's only on a certain percentage. If you actually move that up a little bit, it should enlarge in that picture.
Yeah, it's only on 39%.
Ooh, well done. Well done.
There.
Yeah, so
just read the notes.
Yeah,
Well done, that genius.
It's a bit too big now.
Okay.
You'll just need to move up and down the slide, Vicky, because the notes section's taking up a quarter of the screen.
Oh, fine. Okay, if people can let me know if they can't see something, that's great, because my view is very different to what you can see by the look of it, which is helpful. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Mr. Belcher. He's going to talk us through the presentation and I'm going to move us through this.
Ah, lovely. That's great. Yeah.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So I'm Simon Belcher. I head up the Digital Services Division for Gwent Police and South Wales Police. What that is, that's, we're really a department that looks to bring in all the new technology into both the forces. The aim is very much that we have a similar approach to what we do in relation to all of our technology for both forces. There's joint decision making throughout, so we have chief officers from both forces on all of our programme boards. And the real aim is that we have the same provision, the officers and staff have the same kits of equipment and bits of time working in Chepstow, whether in Gower, Car. I've been in the department for 18 months and really good. It's not only the mix of officers and staff in the department, but also that working with us, both Gwent Police, South Wales Police, sharing that knowledge and that common approach as well. And very much an operational perspective that we do have police officers within the unit as well to make sure that what we do actually impacts properly on those frontline officers at 4 o'clock in the morning. So our aim is really to provide that effective digital policing service to 7,000 officers and staff and around 2 million members of public in both forces. Over to yourself, Vicky.
Great.
Do you want me to go through the slides, Vicky, or yourself?
Yeah, no, I can go through them. Sorry, boss. For some reason, my
that's fine.
technology's playing it, which is ironic, everybody, bearing in mind I work in the Digital Services Division, so bear with me. So, okay, we're moving over to facial recognition, and I appreciate that that's the reason that you wanted us to be here today, to talk to you and to answer any questions. So I'm sure you've already got some knowledge, but facial recognition is obviously software that can automatically detect faces in an image or a video and compare it with a database of facial images I will talk about it as we move through the presentation, but obviously the real benefit with the software is the speed in which you can do that detection of faces. It is, as it says on the tin, an automatic process. Now there are two elements of this, and this is very often where the questions and the concerns arise. And as the DCC has already mentioned, the first is in relation to the retrospective facial recognition. So this is where a crime scene image is used to compare to a larger, already existing database of images to try and give us a match so that we can progress that investigation. The live facial recognition is where images are used real time, so real-time CCTV, for example, to match a watch list of persons of interest and create an alert when that image is detected. Now, from a Gwent perspective, and I'm sure this is where the questions will come, the focus is on the retrospective facial recognition. So very much on a photo or an image from a crime scene investigation and a comparison to an existing database of images which are already in existence. So this is a slow time activity, for want of a better description, and in reality it's an activity that is already undertaken, but the process is much more manual and can take a period of weeks as opposed to having that automatic process. So just moving down, just to check, can everyone still see that on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, so as I've already mentioned, RFR is slow time. So RFR is the retrospective facial recognition. It compares still images of unknown suspects and persons against a custody database. And in that database, we're talking around 500,000 images or 500,000 people, and it can return up to 200 results at any one time. And there is then a stringent process in place to manage what those next stages look like. So the process is quite cutting edge, and it still requires the involvement of an experienced identification officer to make a best possible match. Because, you know, we all know that technology gives us lots of advantages, it gives us lots of opportunities, but we still need the combination with the experienced identification officer to make sure that the processes are followed and that they're robust in terms of making that identification. So it's been used to assist in the identification of hundreds of suspects across South Wales and has also been utilised to identify individuals in other critical situations. So we're talking situations where there have been offences committed or concerns raised. Okay. So identify, this is effectively how it works in terms of a day-to-day basis. So it is daily business in South Wales in relation to using AFR, particularly this element of it around the retrospective piece. So there is an out-of-hours urgent support system which can be utilised via the control room. There is work ongoing, obviously, in relation to the power of identification and how we use it, how we utilise it, how quickly we can access it. But we all know, we will have seen concerns that have been raised around the legality and the ethics of such technology. And those conversations have been at the forefront of the conversations that we've been having within Gwent and that we've been having across the borders. So the force is linked in very closely with the ethics committee in Gwent, which I'm sure you're all aware of, and has kept a close conversation in line with the appeals that have been raised nationally in terms of how these things are managed. It's really important to note that in terms of the retrospective, so the slow time, that has never been challenged, and there are no appeals in relation to that aspect of it. As I've mentioned, it is slow time, and that's very much what Gwent are looking at this time. So, business benefits. So up to February 2021, and I think this was put together on the 15th of February, so over 2,800 possible identifications had been made with over 900 persons charged. Between January and June 2020, over 1,800 images had been checked. So just bearing in mind, if that had been subject to the manual process, to do one check-in or one process would take on average 2 weeks. So you can see the time difference if this software hadn't been available. And that 2-week conventional ID has been reduced by the use of this retrospective software to a period of 1 hour. Nationally, there's been an awful lot of work undertaken to understand what that means from a benefits perspective. And what can be seen is that up to £250,000 worth of cashable savings for officers with fewer than 3,000 officers has been made. So a real benefit there that can be seen by the forces for both their staff and from an efficiency perspective. So just from a public reassurance perspective, I'm sure people will have seen concerns and questions raised into the use of ASR, and sometimes the two elements can be confused in terms of what they can do, the concerns raised in relation to them, and the forces' intent to use them. So very much Gwent are working jointly with South Wales through the DSD, and because of that relationship, they are cited on the conversations that are ongoing around the concerns that have been raised nationally, and that is given Gwent the ability to make decisions on well-founded information and up-to-date information, and hence the decision at this time that we are only looking at the retrospective element of this software. To support that, we've got the Gwent Ethics Committee internally, and there's been a number of conversations back and forth in terms of feedback from the Ethics Committee. And the Ethics Committee are supportive of the use of the retrospective elements of the software. They felt that it's legitimate when it's used for a criminal investigation. However, they are also mindful of the concerns that may come from the public in terms of the understanding the different elements of what the product can do, and concerns that are raised by people who don't maybe necessarily understand the different elements of it. So feedback from the Ethics Committee very much supports the ethos that the forces are transparent in terms of the usage of the system, what it can do, the measures that are in place to ensure that there is a robust process for testing and supporting it. So I mentioned already the identification officer process and what's in place. And there's a lot of processes in place to make sure that's managed. So there's standard operating procedures to make sure that the governance and deployment is managed appropriately. Quality impact assessments are undertaken, privacy impact assessments, data protection impact assessments, GDPR has been reviewed, and all of that has been discussed with the Ethics Committee. So there are a number of supporting documentation which is already in place for officers and which is available via the public domain. And the public sector equality duty is obviously an ongoing duty to understand the difference in demographics and some of the concerns that are raised. That being said, as I've mentioned probably about 5 times by now, and you're probably bored of me saying it, the Gwent focus at the moment is very much on that slow time piece and comparing crime scene images to an existing database. So that is a quick run through, and I appreciate it is a very quick run through of what software is and what it can do. I'm going to stop sharing this now so that I can see everybody and open it up to any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I see we have a few hands. Chief Supervisor, I see you want to come in before any further questions. I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, very sorry. If I could just make a couple of points as well. So first off, maybe just to give a couple of examples in relation to both uses. So looking at that live one where, as Vicky's mentioned, that's where we use the vans, and that's for lifetime deployment, which was subject to judicial review. Just to give one example, there was a heavy metal rock band playing a number of concerts throughout the UK. In 6 previous concerts, there were 97 thefts in just those 6 concerts. the AFR live bands were deployed at the concert in Cardiff, resulting in a subject who was in the watch list being identified, making off and being stopped by officers. As a result, there were no thefts whatsoever within that concert compared to the 97 previous 6. Also, we've had people like being picked up on the AFR cameras for robberies. We had someone sentenced 60 pounds for robbery picked up on those AFR live cameras. In relation to the retrospective slow time, you may have seen on the news recently, it was heavily featured throughout the news, an article in relation to a dangerous sexual predator who was actually sentenced to concurrent life sentences as a result of this use of his facial imagery after a very brave victim came forward. But we also use it to ID people. So we've had unconscious people at road traffic accidents, but we've actually been able to identify them and been able to speak to their family quickly, and also deceased persons that members of the public come across. So there's very good varied uses in relation to that. Just going quickly on to, there's obviously the judicial review in relation to the lifetime deployment of facial recognition. And that's resulted in basically ourselves looking at the national code of practice, making sure we're doing the public sector quality duty properly accounted for that, and to apply for data protection assessment. So there's national meetings looking at that and looking at making sure we have a national codes of practice in relation to the lifetime deployment. But one thing I'd just like to emphasise, and it was commented upon, I think the way that South Wales approached facial recognition, what they're praised for, is very much about transparency. So there's obviously a lot of debate around the ethics of use of facial recognition, and we'll continue to use it in the Digital Service Division. Invite people in who have queries or concerns to come and have a look, see how it actually works. We're always open, we won't hide anything. Come and have a look how our system works. Every deployment that we're looking to do goes on the website, and obviously it's paused at the moment, lifetime deployment, because of the judicial review. But that's what happens, we're as open as we possibly can in relation to the use of facial recognition. And just to know, we're talking about the slow time, but also something that's been put into South Wales, and we'd look to do it where other forces would look to come on board facial recognition, is that any deployment has to be authorised by a superintendent, but also then we make the commissioner's team aware for any deployment as well, in case there are concerns. So just wanted to emphasise that is very much about being transparent and open and making sure that facial recognition is used properly and ethically.
Thank you very much. We have a number of questions, which is not surprising. So I'll work through in the order that hands are raised. So I'll start with Councillor Tony Eason, followed by Councillor Jason Jordan, please. And then we'll move on to the others.
Well, thank you. I think I didn't raise this first. I was quick. I've got 5 questions. I'll ask you the questions first rather than have it one at a time. I understand it's going to be a slow system rather than a live system. That's fine. Well, that's fine in my understanding. How long would the data on the slow system be kept as a record? Has it been used in any locations within Gwent as a fixed system, you might say? And do the officers run a joint service across borders? And as such, are the officers identified as to the force where they might come from? Is it possible that the system would be included within the joint local CCTV systems we got across the communities? In other words, is it a super CCTV system? And the final question, which is a bit more complicated than even asking it. When you record the information on a slow system, I'll call it a rolling database, for example, how is the database updated from that slow system to encompass, I'm not quite sure how to put this, but to encompass a record for the future, is it necessary? In other words, is the system flexible enough and available to have the database updated on the basis of the slow system? Does that make sense?
I'll try my best. and if I've missed the point with the last one, then we'll work it out between us.
Yeah.
Okay, so first question in relation to the slow system. The images are images that are used from the custody database. So the rules around retention are the same rules of retention that apply to custody images. So that's SAP there and the requirements of PACE as opposed to rules that we put on it because of AFR. The next one, has it been used as a fixed system? Sorry, do you mean has it been deployed in a fixed location?
Sorry, I rephrase that. Has it been used within Gwent, basically? You haven't got a fixed location because it's a slow system unless you go to a concert, for example. So is it been used in Gwent, really? That's the main question.
So Gwent have utilised the retrospective elements of the system.
Right.
They Gwent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very much on an ad hoc basis and in exceptional circumstances.
Could I come in just to perhaps clarify, if that's okay, Mr. Easton? So at this moment in time, anybody who comes through our custody system has their image recorded, and that is retained on our system, so on Niche, which is a system that we use within custody, case files, intelligence, etc. So that's already on there. If, for instance, we had a theft that occurred at a supermarket or at a petrol station, there would be images on their CCTV, and there's a comparison that then happens, if you can see what I mean, rather than it being a fixed camera that is picking up images and then comparing it. It is from a crime scene. So anything that is recorded from a crime scene that we ordinarily would rely upon people recognising that individual. And then it allows us to automatically pick up on the facial elements of that crime scene image and compare it against the vast array of images that we've got in the database. That's already there from the custody environment. Does that make sense, Mr. Easton?
I think that sort of answers my final question, which I couldn't quite get out. Basically, you are linking your facial recognition technology with other CCTV systems when you get the information from them. For example, we do have them in communities, and we do, as you say, have them in shops and supermarkets. I think you've answered the fourth question. I couldn't get out properly, but yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. Sorry, Vicky.
No, that's all right, Mum. That was really helpful.
So, could I come in? Sorry, Simon Belcher, just to follow up on that as well. So, 5-10 years ago, officers would go to a shoplifter, get a photograph of a suspect, and basically put it up on the wall or put it up on the internet to say, does anybody recognise this? This basically does exactly the same, but as the Deputy Chief Constable said, uses the images that we've already got in the database in relation to the custody. So it's very much it's bringing the old-fashioned way of circulating a photo. Does anyone recognise the shoplifter? But putting it into our system, so the system identifies it can identify it within 5, 10, 15 minutes, as opposed to officers taking days.
Yeah, and if it was a completely live system, we'd pick it up straight away.
If it was a live system, you would have so the live system works that say we had a huge concert here at Gwent, and we were aware, and Chief Superintendent Belch has already sort of mentioned it. We're aware that as that that particular venue had attracted pickpockets or had attracted some individuals who were causing a problem around disorder, then we would be able to put together a watch list of those individuals, and lifetime the system would search the crowds to identify whether that person was in there. That's how that works, and we're not looking at doing that at the moment because that's the element that is under judicial review at the moment. Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at the crime scene, shoplifter, petrol, whatever it may be. We've got a CCTV image of them. Can we load that onto the system and compare it against all of our custody images? So that's what we're seeking to do.
Okay. Well, you've answered my fourth and fifth questions really all in one. The last one really was how do officers deploy it? Will you be cross-border officers? Would there be identification of those officers and where they came from? Really, that's the last question.
Yes. Yeah. Go on, Vicky.
Sorry, ma'am. So effectively, in relation to the slow time system, for want of a better description, if somebody wants to utilise or access that, there needs to be a request, as Mr. Belcher has already referenced, to a superintendent who will consider that request before anything has happened, and then should it be authorised, it will go via our identification teams, who will for want of a better word, put the image into the system to see if a match comes out the other end.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's my questions. I'll leave it like that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Councillor Eason. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you, Vicky, for your presentation. Just the figures, we'll go back on your business benefits on the slide. Those figures, do this show us like the joint of both South Wales and Gwent?
No, so apologies. Are you referencing the savings?
No. On the business benefit, there's over 2,800 possible identifications with over 900 persons charged in February 2021. Is that both from Gwent Police and South Wales?
No. So the figures that you can see in there are from what's been presented from our AFR, gosh, that's a mouthful, lead in South Wales.
In South. So in Gwent, then what is it affected as in Gwent Police then, and how many of those people have been charged and are from Gwent Police, are from Gwent?
So Gwent are obviously in a very different position at the minute because they're not using the system as South Wales in. Gwent very much have got an eye on the utilisation of the slow time, but has paused the work whilst the judicial review and those conversations have been ongoing. So whilst I reference it has been used on an ad hoc basis where there's been exceptional circumstances and the needs have arisen, it's not used on a day-to-day basis. So I haven't got that list of numbers because they don't look anything like the South Wales numbers. Yeah. I can certainly get them if you would like them, but it's a very different position in Gwent at the minute.
Right, okay, no problem, thanks.
Sorry, thank you. And pass it now to Councillor Peter Nuttall and then to Jeff Cuthbert, please. Sorry. Peter Nuttall, then Jeff Cuthbert, thank you.
I'm not a councillor. What other organisations or a government or private are able to use the FR system and access to your database? Presumably people like Customs and Excise or Border Control have their own or can access yours. And is it shared internationally?
Sorry, I was just waiting for the phone to finish. So shared internationally, no, there's no information shared internationally. The system is based on our custody database. So we're comparing images to what we've got on our custody database. There are certainly conversations ongoing across the country in terms of different forces having different AFR equipment, for want of a better word. But we work with South Wales. So Gwent and South Wales are in the Joint Services Division together, and we share information between us through that collaboration. We don't share outside of that business agreement at this time.
Can I just come in terms of that, Mr. Nuttall, just to verify as well? So the Home Office biometrics team are picking this up from a national perspective and indeed an international perspective. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of work to do. So the work that South Wales Police have done alongside the Metropolitan Police have really been the first two forces that have taken this forward. So Home Office biometrics, who I work with in a national role, are very much looking at what South Wales have been doing and what the Metropolitan Police have been doing and working through that at the moment in order to look at what that means from a national and an international perspective. But that would mean that every police force in the country would have to have accessible custody images. And of course, some of the forces work on different IT systems. So there's quite a lot of complexity to work through in terms of making sure that the custody images are good enough to be able to pick up the facial features, to be able to do the match in relation to either prospect of either system. I'm hoping that helps in terms of the understanding. What we're trying to focus on here is using our crime scene images in Gwent on the database that we have in terms of our custody images to pick up local offenders who are, prolific in their nature, and causing that sort of misery around neighbourhood crime that we see, the burglaries, the theft from motor vehicles, the theft from shops, the acquisitive crime sort of candidates who, are damaging community confidence continually. So does that help, Mr. Nuttall?
Yes, it is reassuring. It was just in the back of my mind is mission creep, whether it spreads out into other organisations or even to the private sector where they start using it, which would not be.
No, absolutely. And I think we would from a mission creep point of view, that's why this is sitting with the Home Office, because it needs to be properly regulated in terms of that. It needs to have all of those policies and processes in place and the sign off in relation to the Home Office. In terms of other organisations using it, I think that would be really quite difficult to do because, obviously the images are caught and captured within custody for a specific purpose. So allowing other organisations to be able to access that type of information, has to go through quite considerable governance and ethics panels, etc., to be able to do that. So I understand the concern, but I think that there is quite a framework in place and quite a lot of hurdles to overcome in relation to being able to access such sensitive information. And I know from my national role within PND, agencies seek to onboard, if you like, in terms of PND, and I'm very clear about what they can access and what they can't. And custody images at the moment isn't something they can access. Yeah,
and that's again reassuring. Just then there's just the spectre of hacking into your system.
Yeah, so again, I mean, Simon can give some reassurance around that. And, from that point of view, we are heavily regulated and we're heavily security bound in terms of Home Office systems. We go through quite a process in terms of authentication. We sign up to something called the joint. I call it the GER, but I can't remember what it stands for now. It's a risk assessment tool that identifies how we access into national systems. And there is a huge amount of work from the Home Office Police ICT company and the providers that we purchase IT systems off to make sure that there are all the firewalls in place to prevent us being in a position where we have those, those issues occurring.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just come in there again, sorry, just following up from what the DEP said as well. Absolutely, we've had South Wales have had a dedicated chief inspector on this for a number of years, really, and we've got those links into those national security companies and national ICT. Also, what is key is that there's now a national board in place for facial recognition in policing, which is actually chaired by Chief Constable Vaughan from South Wales. And the whole point of that is to make sure that there isn't that mission creep. All the police services that sign up to facial recognition, we're able to learn from best practice from previous. We're able to learn from the judicial review, but also make sure that we've got those security measures in place as well. And also those links into the different Home Office departments as well, who do sit on that board as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand over now to the Police and Crime Commissioner, Jeff.
Thank you very much. It's just to reinforce some points which to a degree have been covered in the questioning that has happened up to now. It's just to reassure the panel that whilst this is a operational tool like any other in many respects, and it's a matter for Gwent Police, it doesn't mean that we give them a blank check to do whatever they want. Certainly with new technology and new practices like this, a close eye is kept on its proportionate use. We are sensitive to what the community may think about things and what their experiences could be. So the reference being made to the Ethics Committee, which will keep an oversight as to how this is actually operating in practice and deal with issues as they may arise. And indeed, we already have our own independent advisory group, which will, without doubt, advise us if there is concerns within the community about this new use, what is for us new technology and new practices. So it is something we'll keep a very careful eye on, but I've got no doubt, no reason to think at this point that the technology that will be used, the locate aspect of automatic facial recognition, is appropriate and will be used well for the benefit of the safety of the people of Gwent. If I didn't think that that was the case, I'd have a different point of view.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any further questions on this agenda item? Can't see any further hands up, just checking. No, okay. Well, I think I'd just like to thank the officers involved from South Wales Police and Gwent Police for that really interesting presentation, and thank the members for their interest. We look forward to the developments on this, and you know, it's always good to see new technology being used to help gain the evidence, to help support the officers, and to ensure that the evidence remains there, and obviously that the increase in, oh, sorry, I can just see Larry Thomas would like to come in. Larry, would you like to come in?
Yeah, sorry, Jill, I was just going to wait until you finished your concluding remarks, so apologies for cutting across you, but I just suppose wanted to remind people of Superintendent Belcher's very clear offer that there's an open door for people who want to understand more or to engage with the Digital Services Department in relation to the use of this technology. So, you know, very, very clearly and very welcomed.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much once again to those officers, and thanks for your time in putting the presentation and coming to the panel today.
Oh, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Moving on then to moving back up the agenda item 4, we'll pass over to the Police and Crime Commissioner for his update for March 2021. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. You have the printed update in front of you, marked agenda item 4. Before I hand over for questions, and I may well defer responses, answers to members of my team as appropriate, I just want to reinforce some points and to add a couple of new ones. You will notice on the COVID-19 implications, I refer to the issue of vaccinations for police officers in the middle paragraph. That remains a very hot issue, not just within Gwent, but right across Wales and indeed the whole of the UK. People will be aware that there is a drive for police officers to be recognised in terms of the threat and risk to their job, and that they, whilst certainly not wanting to be moved up in terms of age or infirmity for inoculations early, that the extra risks that they run on our behalf should be recognised, and certainly at the very least in terms of surplus vaccines, that they ought to be allocated to police officers. We realise that we're also in competition with teachers and other public service workers, but we think that the case for police officers ought to be recognised because they will go into situations that others will not, where there's a good risk that COVID-19 could be present to break up parties, gatherings. They will have to access people who've been in crashed vehicles, for example, and nobody knows what state they may be in. Tragically, we've also had occasions where police officers have been assaulted and even spat at by people claiming to have COVID-19, and you can imagine the distress and nervousness that that causes for police officers. So we do hope that there could be a change in that, and it's certainly something that right across Wales, all commissioners and chief constables are active on. I want to mention separately that there's also a review of police and crime commissioners. That's a national review that's been led by the Home Office. We've been the outcomes of the review have been delayed, and they're still delayed. But we are anticipating in a matter of about a week or thereabouts that we will have the outcome of the review and what changes it will mean for police and crime commissioners going forward. Clearly, it's very important that any changes are properly understood before the election, because it would not be right for candidates to come forward and then to find out afterwards that there were significant changes to the role of commissioners that they hadn't anticipated, and they then find themselves in a situation that they weren't really prepared for. So whilst we're not anticipating that there will be significant changes, it's possible that there could be, and we certainly need to have that information, as do panels need to have that information sooner rather than later. We hope within a matter of a week or thereabouts, we will have clarity on that. And of course, panel members will be informed of implications. The other point I just want to mention, of course, that you won't find in there in the printed material is that last Wednesday we had the budget. It's too early for us to say what the implications are for the budget for police funding. I'm quite sure that Darren may want to re-emphasise that. We are waiting to hear whether there might be significant issues in terms of funding for police. We know, for example, that there's still a comprehensive spending review to be resolved and the police funding formula, all of which are uncertain issues at this point. Once we get clarity on that, everyone will, well, I hope we'll be relieved, or we might be very worried. It depends on what the clarification is. But I'll leave that there, Madam Chair, if I may, and together with my colleagues to deal with any questions that there may be.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all the information and thank you for the report prior to the meeting. We will go through, we have a few questions, we'll go through page by page, so we'll start on page 11. First questions from page 11, there are two questions from Councillor Mann, if you'd like to pick both of those up. And I believe, Councillor Reeson, do you have a question you want to come in with on page 11 about the vaccinations as well? Okay, so we'll take Councillor Mann's two questions and then followed by Councillor Reeson. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this is the one on referring to page 11, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, it's basically that we welcome the recognition that is given to the retail staff who are trying to cope with, say, rogue members of the public during the pandemic, and welcome the support that people are getting, because it is a very difficult job on the front line to deal with some of the individuals concerned.
Oh, yeah, yes. Well, thank you for that. We agree absolutely. If you finish that particular point, I remember it was organised by ASDOR, the Zoom event supported by the Cooperative Retail Society, and quite frankly, some of the incidents were shocking. One of the issues that we left the retail workers with was to plead with them to make sure they report every incident that really shouldn't be happening, because there was a view that things weren't worth reporting because they were regarded as being too trivial by the police. That is not the case. We view all such incidents, as I'm sure the Deputy Chief Constable would confirm, and we do really want people to report things that shouldn't be happening to them.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner.
Did you want to pick up your second question on crime prevention, Councillor Mann, at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, is that the dog one you want to?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's there is concern where people do often have dogs which are not kept under control. It does seem that the police quite often don't give sort of dog-on-dog attacks very high priority, but I've had a couple of incidents locally, I'm sure it's not unique here, where there are fears that people who are not keeping dogs under control, it may well develop into a more serious issue where maybe a dog owner is attacked by another dog trying to protect their particular pet. It was really to clarify exactly how much importance that individual officers are able to put onto this sort of situation.
Oh, right. Well, thank you. That's an operational matter, clearly, and perhaps it might be best for the Deputy Chief Constable to respond to that, if you don't mind, Chair. What I can say is that the issue of dogs certainly has come to my attention a bit more, and that includes people. I've had 2 or 3 recently, people who claim that people who try to steal their dogs whilst out walking, and a little bit more familiar with that. Fortunately, it can be very distressing, but it's not a common occurrence, I'm pleased to say, in Gwent. On the issue of dog fights and what may happen, I would rather, if you don't mind, Chair, hand over to the Deputy Chief Constable to give a policing response on that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Commissioner. So first off, to recognise how distressing these incidents can be, especially where one dog owner finds themselves in a position quite fearful in relation to a dog that is either with an owner or is actually not under control. Obviously, we are investing and have invested in our local neighbourhood policing teams because this, can be sometimes an issue in relation to one particular dog owner or one particular issue around sort of antisocial behaviour and failing to keep a dog under control. If there is anything that I can deal with outside of this meeting that you would like to raise with me individually because there's a particular issue that's being brought to your attention, then I would be more than happy to do that. I'm not aware that this is an issue that is widespread across Gwent. We have the legislation in place in order for us to be able to pursue those individuals effectively. So I think it might be worth me picking that up with you individually to see what may be the situation in the circumstances outlined and make sure that that's got an appropriate response to it. Does that assist?
Yeah, thanks for that. I can probably get some more detail, maybe drop you an email. It was is really what the guidance was, because certainly on past occasions, the message really has come through that very sorry, there's not really much we can do about this. Yeah. But it's not the actual, it's not the dog on dog incident, it's where it might go from there is the problem. And
absolutely.
certainly that is what that's the sort of situation that has been brought to me more recently.
Yeah, and there's a range of options that we can use in those instances besides failing to keep a dog under control in terms of antisocial behaviour, etc. So I'd be interested to look at the case individually in order that we can make sure that there's no escalation in harm.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Peter, did you want to come in on that particular point? I noticed you've put your hand up during that discussion. Was it relating to the dogs?
No, it was actually on the police commissioner's comment on police officers being spat at while doing their job. I just wanted, it was a question for the Deputy Chief Constable. Can she reassure us that this actual assault on a police officer by spitting at them, possibly with menaces, if they're saying they've got COVID, is prosecuted through the courts vigorously?
So, Commissioner, I'm okay to answer. Yes. So yes, Mr. Mitchell, I can.
Yes, of course.
I can give you absolute assurance that it is. We take these matters very seriously. Our officers put ourselves at the forefront of what can be quite chaotic situations involving, quite chaotic circumstances, and to find themselves being at the forefront of abuse, whether that be spitting or physical, hands-on abuse in terms of assault, and in fact, that spitting does fall into that category. We take a very clear view in relation to that in terms of prosecution. And, you know, the Chief Constable herself writes a statement for the file to support the officer in relation to the fact that we don't expect any of our officers to be dealt with or treated like that by any member of the community. You know, and clearly, you know, it has a detrimental effect on them, on their welfare and well-being. These are individuals with families, with home lives, and, you know, clearly it's a very frightening set of circumstances to find yourself in. We issue all of our officers with the proper protective equipment to make sure that they are protected, and we have an occupational health team here that if any of our officers are concerned or worried about something that they've been involved in, or they find themselves subject of an assault, we put an added amount of care into making sure that we've got all of the relevant medical and emotional care that they need in relation to being able to recover from that.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eason, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It was back to the position of vaccinations, which I thought might not be discussed this morning because decisions need to be made. But I concur with the Police and Crime Commissioner that there is I'll use the word issue broadly, that police who get spat at could be contaminated, etc. But I don't understand the policy. I understand if the health workers within hospitals, I got two grandsons, both got partners. One is a doctor. She's had both vaccinations. The other grandson's partner is an optician, or with an optician. She's had vaccinations. They're young. What concerns me is, with the police, what is the age profile of the police from 20 to 60? And are you confident that that age profile could well be encompassed within the vaccination programme to eliminate the need, well, not to eliminate the need for them to have vaccinations, but to try and cover the fact that most of them could well be covered in the national programme in any case? Because that's the argument that's been made by politicians, that to identify certain groups is going to slow down the vaccination process in particular. Have you got a view on that, Jeff?
Thank you for that. You are right that that's the argument that's been put forward, and I can't deny that there is some validity to it. I think the Deputy Chief Constable will confirm that most police officers, I think, are in the age range 30 to 40, maybe a few in the 50s. Someone of my age, to find that a police officer at the age of 50 can retire after 30 years, I still find incredible. But there we are. So yeah, I mean, they would, in due course, be covered by the age profiles. The issue is, how long will that take, as far as we're concerned, because police officers are facing these issues now, and especially if there are surplus vaccines, we see no reason why they can't be allocated to police officers, as they were briefly in North Wales, although that has stopped for the time being. We do understand, you know, this is a four nations approach, and the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Inoculations has made a ruling, and the Welsh Government is abiding by that, even though the First Minister has expressed his support in principle, at least, for looking at threat, risk and harm in terms of occupational roles, and we're encouraged by that. But I think that if I could just ask the Amanda to confirm the age profile of officers who will be caught in time. The issue is how quickly this is going to happen.
No, thank you very much, Commissioner. And yes, you're right. You know, we have officers sort of 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Sadly, I don't fall into either of those categories. But obviously, that means for our officers who are on those frontline duties, you know, the ones that we just spoke about, that are finding themselves at the forefront of, physical attacks, being spat at, they are some way down the list in terms of vaccination. So it's not that they won't get it, it is a case of when they will get it. And clearly the position that we're putting forward is in relation to any vaccines that at the end of the day are not used and therefore may be disposed of. Could those be redirected in relation to some of our officers who have critical functions, and to lose them to a a COVID infection or self-isolation, has a detrimental impact upon our availability of resource. So that's the position that we've very much been putting forward around vaccinations.
Just quickly to come back in before Eleni comes in. Now, there's going to be, according to the Chief Pharmacist of Wales, there's going to be a massive rollout of vaccinations in the next number of weeks. So let's hope we can get to a resolution which satisfies all parties. Thank you.
Yes. Eleni, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, just to add really to the discussion, and I'm really pleased that the panel members are supporting us in calling for vaccinations for police officers as appropriate and proportionate to their roles, and undertaking and recognising the risk, the threat and risk that police officers face. And I think in particular our discussions with the Policing Minister and the First Minister for Wales very much focus on the important role we are asking our officers and staff to undertake in enforcing the COVID regulations. So we know that we are asking officers to intervene in situations where people are known to have COVID, and that we're asking them to be proactive in intervening with people who have tested positive for the virus. I just want to reiterate, we are requesting a proportionate response and not asking for blanket vaccination of police officers. And really just to add to let the committee know that police forces across England and Wales have stood up vaccination programmes so that when the supply, and I think the issue really is one of supply of the vaccination, when the supply is available, then policing will undertake a vaccination programme for our officers and staff. We will not be in any way expecting the NHS to be undertaking or to be using any of their vaccination infrastructure in order to vaccinate police officers. So just to provide that reassurance.
Thank you. Councillor Outley, did you want to come in with a final point on this issue?
Yes, please, Madam Chairman. You know what, we live in not uncertain times, that's been said, but we live in disproportionate times. I certainly find it very strange when police officers are not offered the vaccinations, when prison officers are not offered the vaccinations, and when people working in the general community serving us, as they have done right throughout this pandemic, are not offered vaccinations. And these are the people that keep us safe. But I suppose we've got our priorities right. Those people who transgress the prisoners, they get the vaccinations, and yet they're the very people who we could find it easy to isolate. So for me, I think we've got it wrong. I think those who protect and serve the nation should be first, and those who transgress the nation, well, they should wait until the others that serve have been done. I really am passionate about this, but and can I say to the Police and Crime Commissioner, Mr. Cuthbert, wow, you are looking absolutely fantastic, and your recovery has pleased me. You must have been on Bob Martin's. That's all I can say to you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
You're barking well this morning.
Thank you.
A final question on page 11. There's been a lot of social media and press attention to stolen dogs, and it was actually interesting that you referred to this just now. What are the Police CC and the Chief Constable doing in terms of prevention and guidance? Because maybe some things are not getting reported to the police, but there certainly does seem to be growing evidence about maybe attempted theft of dogs, and people reporting on social media they've seen a vehicle they seem to be approaching. So I just wondered what the approach was going to be.
Right, okay. Well, obviously I partially anticipated that question. It is something, when the issue of dog fights was raised, it did spark in my mind that I'd had a few contacts from people who've been out walking the dogs, and people had either tried to steal them or had stolen them. And what would we be doing about it? And of course, it's incredibly difficult for our police to do anything unless they happen to be there at that time. We do issue advice to people about, I suppose, where they walk. If they see vehicles that look suspicious in any way, patrolling areas, that they must report this, and they can do it easily enough through 101 or other systems. But it is incredibly difficult if the criminals, and these are generally organized criminals, they are sophisticated, and they'll be looking to seize their opportunities. It's not widespread within Gwent, even though I've had a few calls. There's not a great deal. It's very much about crime prevention and crime education, which is certainly things for us, and about how people should take care of their property. And in that sense, the dog is a property. But in terms of actual incidents, could I, with your agreement, Chair, ask the Deputy Chief Constable if she could comment?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. So yes, so from a Gwent perspective, it's a issue. So what I say for first and foremost is that for anybody who finds themselves in a position where their dog is taken, it's incredibly distressing for them, and it isn't lost on me that dogs form a very important part of the family, and they've been instrumental in well-being over the last year as people have been at home, and obviously keeping safe. A number of people over this time period have bought dogs. So we've seen an increase in the amount of people that have a dog at home because they found that their situation has changed and they are able to be in and care for a dog. So obviously, have taken that opportunity. From a Gwent perspective, we aren't seeing a huge increase. We have seen some. And some is more than we would want, so therefore we have got to focus on it. And the Chief Executive, Sean Curley, has posted some information that we've put out from a national position, and I am able to comment on this because I'm the national lead for acquisitive crime, and this falls into the area that I've been looking at nationally. I'm also looking into much that I have a national intelligence team that have focused on this for me, so I can understand what it is that is happening nationally. We've only a few forces in the country that have seen a increase in dog thefts. I've been working with the National Gamekeepers Association because for our rural communities particularly, who spend a great deal of money purchasing a dog, then training a dog, and it is part of their livelihood, the theft of a dog is a huge impact on them in terms of income and their livelihood. So we don't also remember that side of this this criminality. So we're doing some work with the National Gamekeepers Association to understand that. We're also doing the assessment across the country to see actually where are the increases in dog thefts. The social media activity has heightened the issue. So we see a lot of people reporting suspicious vehicles, but it's suspicious rather than being connected to a dog theft. And we would always encourage people to call in and let us know if they see something suspicious happening in their area. So, we can't say that all suspicious vehicles are related to the attempt to steal a dog. And sometimes that conclusion gets jumped to quite quickly. Obviously, we're doing a lot of work with the microchip database associations around this as well, in order to understand, how dogs are being sold on and what is happening in relation to that. But we are working heavily with our rural crime teams in terms of understanding that issue for our rural communities, gamekeepers, farmers, etc. And then also with our local policing teams in relation to domestic dog owners who find themselves in this situation. I'd like to reassure that the national figures are not at the level that perhaps some of the social media position would lead you to believe, but it's still an issue, and it is still something that we are encouraging people to take some, sort of very basic crime prevention, activities in relation to, and we are focused on in terms of investigation.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. And I think one of the unfortunate impacts of lockdown is that pets have become such such a vital part of the family, but it also means they've become very expensive because of the demand for them.
Absolutely.
So they've become a means of income for other people, shall we say. So hopefully, you know, people continue to report wisely and safely, and, you know, their animals will be kept safe. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to page 12 and 13 under supporting victims, we have 2 questions from Councillor Eason for you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and roll my questions into one. It's to do with the, my iPad's gone silly, I got it. It's to do with safeguarding hubs and victim support services. I think they can be rolled into one. In terms of Monmouthshire, I understand there's one hub in Abergavenny, but there's nothing in the south of the county. Perhaps you could comment on that. And related to my next question, which is to do with safeguarding and victim support services, which maybe the hubs would be a useful tool in the south of the county. So that's the thrust of my question. But in terms of safeguarding as well, you mentioned £139,000 is being put towards Gwent, towards victims of rape and domestic abuse. Another matter that's come to my mind watching television last night was within the ethnic minorities was honour killings. Well, I haven't seen any honour killings in Gwent or Monmouthshire, but do you have any issues with ethnic minorities in terms of supporting ladies, particularly where they're suffering this sort of abuse? Generally, how do we deal with abuse for women in particular? Do we have the right facilities in the south of the county? And how is it rolling into Newport? And where's this £139,000 going to be spent on? Is that concise enough?
Thank you. Yes, I'll try and go through the two items. Just on the safeguarding hubs, this is very fresh in my mind because earlier this week we had our strategy and performance board meeting with Gwent Police, which is my main vehicle for holding the Chief Constable to account. And one of the issues that was raised was where we are with the safeguarding hubs. There is no one safeguarding hub in each of the local authority areas. Abergavenny, as you say, in terms of Monmouthshire. Off the top of my head, I don't have the precise locations for each of the 5. If the panel members want that information, I can certainly get it to you. But I do know that relatively recently, there are now hubs in each of the 5 local authority areas that all include police officers and representative of other agencies who work with those families, children and adults who need that, who are vulnerable and need that extra support. You will probably remember the Missing Children's Hub that did exist. That, if you like, its services are now part of the various hubs across the 5 local authorities. Issues, as we put in the actual printed note, the Early Action Together programme is supported there. Operation Encompass, for example, will also be supported, which is the scheme we have in Gwent, so that should school children witness domestic violence, their schools are informed and due allowance can then be made for the support of that child. We've also listed the 6 bullet points of the extra support there that's been provided as a result at those hubs, things like serious violence, providing support, etc. You made some requests then about information on victim support, specifically the issue of the £139,000, which is our share of the 40 million that the UK government has allocated for this. I will, if you agree, Chair, bring in Darren, who can talk in a little bit more detail about how that money is allocated. But if my memory is correct, it's mainly allocated to provide for additional independent domestic violence advisors. I think it's another 3 or 4, in addition to the 6 or 7 that we have already. I know that there's a new one that's been added to focus on the impact of violence and abuse on older people. And indeed, there's one that will look at the issue of sexual violence, but particularly as it affects males. The rest overwhelmingly look at the issue of females. I made a note that you raised the issue of honour killings, honour violence. That's not something that's come to my attention specifically, either in Newport or Gwent more generally. Possibly the Deputy Chief Constable could expand on that a little bit. Clearly, where we do come across issues of violence against women, whatever the background and whatever the reason, it's treated very seriously indeed. I don't think I can say much more, Chair, than that, except with your agreement, ask if Amanda could comment on that final point.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. So, absolutely. So 5 safeguarding hubs, and as the Commissioner mentioned, 1 in each local authority. So at Newport, it's in the Civic Centre. In Caerphilly, it's at Oakdale. In Monmouthshire, as already identified. Torvine in the Civic Centre, and Gwent is in Anvil Court. So we have the 5 in place, and obviously the vision of this work is very much to sort of improve that multi-agency approach to safeguarding, as you would anticipate, and to get those early intervention prevention arrangements right from the outset for adults and for children. So we have 1 front door in relation to coming through in relation to Gwent. So we've picked up on that significant drive, both nationally and locally, towards developing those collaborative safeguarding approaches, and that early intervention and prevention that I spoke about. So obviously there's the national policy. Myself and Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner Larry Thomas work very closely with the Welsh Government in relation to the blueprint approach around violence against women and girls and domestic abuse. So we've got all of those things very much locked into the services that we're supplying across Gwent. I note the position in relation to Monmouthshire. We have 1 safeguarding multi-agency safeguarding hub. We're now in the process of assessing who else could be part of the arrangements in those safeguarding hubs, because at the moment we work with our local authority adult and children's services, Anara and Bevan, the probation service, and also the missing service, as well as the intervention and prevention organisations within local authorities. So we're seeing how we can expand that out. But does that help in terms of, obviously how many we've got, where they are, and what they do in relation to our safeguarding hubs?
You're still on mute, Councillor Eason.
Sorry. No, on reflection, going back a number of years, there was discussions with and through the Chief Police and Crime Commissioner that we would be looking at certain aspects within the south of the county where half the Monmouthshire population actually lives, and along the Sevenside corridor, a very busy tract of countryside between Bristol and Newport. It does attract crime and all sorts. We had a stabbing there last week, the first time in my memory. There was some talk within the Caldecott area in particular, I don't know about Chepstow, that one of the council hubs which was there would be looked to be converted into the same sort of facility that it got in north of the county. Right. I just wondered whether the Police and Crime Commissioner would be considering looking expanding the hub system through yourself, the Deputy Chief Constable, to improve that facility for the population of nearly 50,000 people.
Could I just say, let Amanda come back in, but certainly I understand the size of Monmouthshire when compared with population. I understand the geographic spread. It's certainly something I'm happy to take away and to look at what may be possible in terms of perhaps splitting the hub or a branch of the hub. Very happy to look at that. I don't want to give any guarantees at the moment, especially as we come near to the further period, but it's certainly something that's worthy of further consideration.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then on honour-based violence, really, a really difficult crime for the victim to have confidence to come forward in relation to. And we recognise very much the signs in relation to the position that may be, facing a victim of honour-based violence. We have, specially trained officers and a lot of support in relation to anybody that is, either suffering from or likely to be a victim of honour-based violence. And that is very much a focus in relation to our domestic abuse public protection hubs, that we've invested that additional effort into the specialist training, but also making sure our officers generally are aware of the signs that they need to pick up on, to have the curiosity to be able to ask the additional questions when they come across something that may spark a little bit of a concern that there may be honour-based violence, present or identified within, a family or a victim's history. Very, very sensitive and very challenging. But I'm confident with the setup that we have around domestic abuse, around safeguarding hubs, around information sharing, that we are doing all that we can to identify and then have those opportunities to be able to signpost and safeguard in relation to this particular area.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Thomas and Roger.
Chair, and sorry, I was going to say I can see Larry Thomas wants to come in, but could I just check with Darren if what I said about the use of the money is right?
Oh yeah.
It was, Commissioner, yes. As you were explaining it, it's absolutely right. I can go into a lot more detail, but I think Larry wants to come in first, just run through the contextual piece. So I'll pause there.
Okay, so if we can take comments from Larry, comments from Darren, and then Rodri Guest also wants to come in with a few comments to finalise this item. Thank you.
Yes, I won't. The Deputy Chief Constables obviously addressed the issue around the location, Councillor Eason, of the safeguarding hubs, and really emphasised the location for each of the hubs for each of the 5 local authority areas. I think what I would just want to add to provide reassurance really are those hubs are in a sense, they're virtual hubs, especially as we've become more used to working within COVID, and that they're where we resource in some respects where we have our multi-agency teams based, but they're certainly not intended to be places where the public would come in to access our services. The services are very much will be coming and going and meeting people in their communities, in their localities. And so where the location is in each local authority, that location is in particular to service the whole of the local authority area. So it's not a hub as in perhaps the one-stop shops are in relation to the delivery of our front of counter services of either the local authority or Gwent Police, but they're where we provide our services from. So I hope that we can provide you with the reassurance that wherever those hubs are in each of the local authority areas, they are to cover the whole of the local authority area with a consistent approach to access to services. The second thing, and it is, I'll defer to Darren in relation to the detail, but really just to emphasise that the additional funding that we have received from the Home Office in relation to victim services, and in particular rape and sexual assault services, are related to ensuring that the concerns that people have around reporting under COVID are addressed, and that we build ways of working across all of our commissioned services that address making sure that we can reach out to people in their communities who may have suffered sexual assault or have been victims of rape, are able to access the support services. So that has been an enhancement to the services that we provide, services through New Pathways, services through Phoenix, services through Bowzo. And I really would want to highlight to you, for you, Councillor Eason, the services that we provide generally through Bowzo, but in particular the enhancements that we've had through that funding that specifically address how do we raise assurance with Black and minority ethnic members of our communities who may be facing violence, rape or sexual violence, but also honour-based violence, female genital mutilation, that we have a specific opportunity through our collaboration with BAWSO to raise awareness with our communities and to assist, and for BAWSO to assist us in reaching those vulnerable members in those communities. And I know that BAWSO works incredibly closely with Inspector Stephanie Blakemore from Gwent Police to really reach out to communities, to raise awareness, to provide confidence in reporting, and to support victims when they come forward.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, just to build on Larry's points there. So the Commissioner already invests the best part of £1 million into sexual violence services, domestic violence services, and perpetrator interventions. So the new money, the extra 140,000, builds on existing provision. Taking that forward, particularly in light of what we've seen through the COVID pandemic. So within that best part of £1 million, there's already 7 IDVAs funded, and they're generic IDVA, high-risk generic IDVAs that deal with children and young people, males, females, etc. And there's 6 ISVAs within that funding as well. So quite a considerable investment already. And the additional money will fund 4 further IDVAs, which the Commissioner has already said 3 will be generic, but the extra one will focus on older people, and 1 further ISVA, which will look at sexual violence experienced by males. So as Alaria said, we already invest significantly in this area, and this additionality takes that piece forward where we can deal with the ever increasing caseloads in this area. Hope that helps.
Thank you, darling.
And final comment from Rodri.
It's very topical, Councillor Eason, raising honour-based killings, because we're actually doing some work at the moment this week, mapping out an honour-based abuse campaign that we're going to look at. We know domestic abuse is largely hidden and it takes place behind closed doors. So we're working with some partners and looking to utilise them to get some cut through. We met with Bowdra Regional Team this week, and we've attended an honour-based abuse workshop by Carmen Nirvana, who are a leading charity in this area. And it's all about understanding the cultures where the practice takes place and get a feel of understanding the barriers victims face to reporting the crime. We're actually meeting with Gwent Police's lead for honour-based abuse later today, and we're going to be looking to basically build on some of the work specifically we did with White Ribbon, which obviously had to be virtual this year, and the take-up, reach and approach was quite innovative and was really successful. And we also replicated some of that for some of the precept work. And it's about, we're not going to solely be relying on social media. It's about using the entire comms mix. We've started using some multi-dialect communications based on the most widely used languages in areas as well. And I'd kind of like to say as well, like with all our campaigns and large-scale engagement work that we've pushed on the last probably 2 years, we're looking to utilise co-production in this process to make sure it's as efficient and as effective as possible, and actually is reaching that target audience to ensure that there are some positive outcomes from what we're trying to do. Realistically, this is going to be a couple of months away. The International Day is in June or July, but once we've got to that, it'll be reported back to the panel in one of the future Commissioner updates.
Thank you. It's a sad need, but necessary.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't see any further hands up with questions on the Commissioner's update. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, panel members, for all your questions. Moving on then to agenda item number 6, the Gwent Police and Crime Panel co-opted members. Myself and Peter need to remove ourselves from this part of the meeting. So I'll hand over to Councillor Mann to chair this item on the agenda. How do we move out of the meeting, please, Kath?
I'm just starting the rooms, Chair, so you'll be
Thanks
moved
very
shortly.
much. Thank you.
All right, okay.
Apologies for the delay. There's a bit of a glitch with some technology this morning, but you should be moving shortly.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay. So our co-op disappeared. I think they have now. I think it's a fairly straightforward report, as you can all see. It is to either replace or reappoint our 2 co-opted members, and the recommendation is to commence with that process. Are there any comments on that, anyone?
Yeah, just one.
Chair, can I just say something?
Oh, sorry, Kath. Yeah.
Yeah, as the report shows, it's the co-opted members' term of office is coterminous with the same year as the commissioners' elections. So obviously, because the commissioner election was delayed from last year, we were doing the appointment process this year. So the report is seeking 2 members to sit on the interview panel with yourself as the vice chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Kath. Tony, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just one question in terms of membership of the police and crime panel from May onwards. It might change. How can we deal with that?
Yes, that's a good point, Councillor Eason. I would say if you're particularly satisfied that you will be reappointed to the panel following your AGMs, please, if you were interested in sitting on the panel, please let us know. If you feel it's unlikely, I would appreciate if you didn't put yourselves forward for the interview panel. Obviously, if there are unexpected circumstances, we could probably say that we will deal with that through email afterwards if there's a problem with the number of people. But obviously, I'd like to see nominations today, and maybe 1 or 2 reserves just in case.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Councillor Clark and myself are there for the term of council, which is to 2022. I don't know about the other councillors in Gwent, but we're both there for next year at least.
Yeah, same for me. I think, and Councillor Rowley and Mark Spencer. I was until 2022 as well. So
I think Torvine tends to change on a regular basis, doesn't it? But I think everybody else is reasonably stable, I believe. Does that include Blaenau Gwent? I mean, Blaenau Gwent have had a couple of changes.
I think Councillor Winnett's likely to continue, obviously, but she isn't here today. So I prefer if members who are present today would be the ones who would seek nomination if that's what they wish.
So could I have 2 nominations to join the panel, please? Or 2 volunteers, if that's easier.
Eason and I mean, I don't mind Jason, myself, anybody.
Yeah, I don't mind either. No,
I have no particular preference, but okay, I'll move Councillor Eason and heads or tails, Jace.
Well, why not both of you?
No, I've done it.
Why
I've
not
done
one
it.
of
heads, go on then.
Oh, you won.
I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Can I nominate Bill? Can I nominate Bill as reserve then?
Yes, I'll go reserve. That's okay.
Is that okay, Chair?
So yeah, that's fine. That was a virtual toss of the coin, I imagine, was it?
We have within the group. I don't know who's with us. Is
could we have another reserve? Possibly, I think, to get some gender balance, maybe a female, I would have thought.
Yeah. I nominate Christina.
Are you willing
Do we have
to-
a second? Yes, Chair, I'm quite willing to stand.
Okay. So are we happy with that as an arrangement, everyone?
Yes.
If you could.
Can I be seconded first, Chair?
I have seconded you. Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, didn't hear you.
I'll give you a third as well.
Hang on, no, slow down.
If you just show your approval with the hands up function, please. There we are. Spelling electronic hands are some real ones. So I think is anyone against? I can't see everyone on the screen, so it's a difficult one to gauge, really.
I think you're fine there,
see
Chair.
more than I can myself.
Yeah, I think no objections, Chair, so I think we're fine to move that.
Okay. Okay then, thanks everyone. We'll proceed on that basis.
No
If these two cooperative members can be brought back in now, please.
I'm just calling them back in, Chair. Apologies for the delay. They should return shortly. Oh, there they go. Thank you.
Both been sacked.
Thanks.
As expected.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back both.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Nice and all.
Moving on then to agenda item 7, the forward work programme. If I hand over to Kath for this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the next meeting for the panel will be on the 2nd of July. We have the normal PCC update and the performance framework and the annual report and the road safety item that Councillor Spencer requested a couple of meetings ago. So if members are happy, we'll put that onto the agenda for the 2nd of July. I don't know if there's any suggestions for future items.
There was a suggestion in the Commissioner's update about a future item for the new Gwent Police operator model, that would be brought to a future meeting. So if we could have that on as a date to be confirmed additional item. And at some point, I guess there would be an update on estates some point in the future. So if we can just put it in as a marker.
We are due for an estates meeting on the 19th, I think. Is that right, Darren?
I'll just have to check 1 second, Councillor Eason.
I think it's the 19th. I was given a date the other day.
It's just to put it on as a marker for a future. I've got Sean Curley and the Commissioner would like to come in as well. So, Sean.
Yes, I was just going to propose it might be useful at some point, because it'll be post-election, to have a session on sort of the plans for the next police and crime plan. So an early, perhaps even if it's just an oral update, and an early sort of conversation about the next steps. And the other one that I was just going to propose was whether or not you'd like to have something in future in relation to crime prevention. There's an awful lot of work that's been done over the last year or so by Gwent Police on crime prevention, which, as you know, is the first priority in the police and crime plan. And there's been a lot of developments with the new strategy and work on crime prevention hubs and that type of thing. So for a future, we can bring that back, and we're going to be having something at the Strategy and Performance Board on it in sort of June time, I think. So at a future meeting of yours, I thought it might be a good one to add to the list as well.
Thank you very much, Sean. Yes, thank you. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. It's just as we come to the end of the meeting to tell members of the panel that Jo Robinson, who you will all know, and the amount of work she's done on the performance framework, she is actually leaving the OPCC. She's got a new job with Llamai. Good job, although I still can't understand what could be a better job than working for the OPCC, but there we are. And so you won't be seeing her again, at least not in that capacity. So I'm sure that you would want to know that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that with us, and please pass on the best wishes of her panel in a new role, and a personal thanks from myself for the amount of work and effort she's put into supporting us with the performance management framework. It's been an excellent piece of work, I think, and tribute to the effort that she's put into that. Councillor Eason, did you want to come in on a point on the forward work programme, please? And then
no, Chair. I think I think Sean Curley sort of addressed what I was going to say, so I think we're right there.
Okay. Darren, did you want to come in and confirm something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it was more about the mechanism by which the reference group, so the estate that Councillor Easton already referred to, and the finance reference group will dovetail and brief the wider panel. Because in previous years, in the June-July meeting, I would have brought in the early indications of the medium-term financial projections. But I appreciate that the last meeting in January, we talked about more work of the finance reference group earlier in the year to do some of the detail, particularly around savings, etc., and digesting. We had the budget this week, and digesting traction around a comprehensive spending review that may or may not land this year. So I'd like to pull forward finance reference group meetings, maintain the momentum of the estate strategy meetings outside of the panel. But then I think it's just a quick conversation, whether it's today or between panel members, how we then dovetail that work and brief the wider panel, really. Because otherwise the July meeting could get quite heavy with an estate briefing and a finance briefing at that level, rather than the subgroups dealing with it.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. It was actually a conversation we had with Kath yesterday about how we do this and how we bring that information forward. So if we take that one as an aside, and we can come back and confirm to the panel how we do that.
Wonderful,
okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further comments on the forward work programme? Sean, I can see your hands up. I'm not sure if that's a remainder hand or if you wanted to add something further.
Sorry, it's showing us down on my screen, so I'm not sure what's happened there.
Thanks, Sean. And Commissioner, did you have a final point on the forward work programme? Oh, it froze in a moment, I think. Okay, looks like there's no further comments on the forward work programme. So that brings us in to the end of the meeting today. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance today. It's been a very interesting meeting. Once again, thank you to the officers who did the presentation and for spending their time supporting the panel with that today. It's been incredibly interesting. Wish Jo, once again, all the best in her role. Everybody take care and stay safe. And our next meeting will be on the 2nd of July 2021. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Good to take care.
Thanks all.
Bye. Bye.